Hi BookTube, it's Roz, and I'm here with a special and different tag for Tag Tuesday. It's not a conventional tag, it's something that Brian started a week ago, Brian at Bookish, and he called it the Banned Books tag. But what it really is well, what he did was he invited us as the BookTube community who love books to talk about banned books as a kind of a response to the way at the moment books are being banned, particularly in America and particularly I think in Texas where he's from. But books have been banned through time. This is not unique to America now. It's not unique to now if we look back over history. But what we do know is that when books are banned, and more than that, when books are burned, as is happening now in America, that says that something is going quite wrong in that time and place and society. So I completely understand his strength of feeling about that, and really wanted to participate in this. So, now at the beginning of his video, which I will link to below, he shows two very chilling clips of news footage, I guess. One from Nazi Germany in the 1930s of books being burned, and then another from the present day in the USA, as I say, I think in Texas. And there's a kind of, I suppose, an added level of irony to the current debate about book banning in America, because one of the books that has recently been challenged is Mouse by Art Spiegelman, which is a book about the Holocaust, and the idea that you then ban that now. The parallels are just too disturbing, really, aren't they? Now, I have to say that there are books that I would not myself choose to read. There are authors that I don't really want to read, but there is such a huge difference between that and wanting or suggesting that those books should be made unavailable. That's the issue. We don't have to read, we don't have to like everything. We don't have to think that every book out there is suitable for perhaps our children to read. But to say that no one should be allowed to read that, to impose that on others, is very, very dangerous. That's what we know. Now, when I watched Brian's video, I realised that I had just very recently read a book that was being burnt in that film that she showed from the 1930s in Germany, and that's a book by Erich Kästner called Going to the Dogs, and it was published in 1931. It's set in Berlin in kind of like the very end of the 1920s, and it was, yes, published in 1931 and being burnt by 1933, as things had shifted swiftly in those couple of years in Germany. Now, the Nazis saw Kästner's book as a decadent book, and Kästner, in the opposite, in a sense, saw himself as writing a moral tale. Bits of this book are grubby and bitter and shocking. Bits are very melancholy. Bits are quite hopeless. Bits have a tremendous sense of foreboding that turned out to be entirely justified. Other bits are very tender, very loving, very warm. To have that kind of knee-jerk response of saying, oh, this book is decadent and people shouldn't be allowed to read it, or it is dangerous to society because of what's in it. That sort of, I don't know, unnuanced response to the content of the book and not understanding Kästner's sort of intentions in writing it is absolutely epitomises the process of book banning and the mindset, I suppose, of people that advocate it. I also realised when I then followed the links that Brian gave to the American Library Association's list of 100 most banned and challenged books of the last decade, 2010 to 2019 in the United States, that there are many books on that list that I have read, two of which I'd also read in the past month alongside the Kästner. One of those is Fun Home by Alison Bechdel, and the other is This One Summer by Mariko and Jillian Tamaki, and they're both graphic novels. And I think I can only presume that it's that same knee-jerk thing of like, there is some content in this that is, I consider, immoral or shocking, so I don't want anyone to be able to read it, as opposed to seeing the richness of the content. The Tamaki book, This One Summer, is definitely aimed at a sort of young adult or teenage audience, and it shows younger teenagers observing older teenagers doing the stuff that older teenagers do, like drinking and having sex, and it's why would we think that we need to, I don't know, hide in our literature stuff that our young people can see every day at school or at college or around them or in the park, or and that's exactly what is this book portrays. And it also shows that getting drunk and having sex doesn't always work out happily for teenage girls in particular, so like Kästner, I guess there's a kind of a morality, in a sense, in the book, which obviously those people reading it can't see. Not morality as in, oh, sex before marriage is a terrible thing, but that we have to be careful of ourselves and careful of teenage girls, maybe. So bizarre to me that someone should say, oh, I don't want that in my school or college library. But actually, the book that in many ways I was most shocked to see on the list of the 2010 to 2019 most banned and challenged books was this one. Okay, and this is The Awakening by Chopin, and because it's an American 19th century classic novel. It's a classic by a woman author. It was published in 1899. I mean, I can see why it was a controversial book when it was first published, because it's a book about an extramarital affair, about adultery is how it would have been seen then, so in 1899 I would have expected this to stir up some controversy, and it did. But it's like an English library being asked to ban Wuthering Heights, say, for being a bit risque in its sort of portrayal of love, passion, relationships, sexuality, family relationships. It beggars belief that anyone wouldn't want this in a library. It's if you haven't read this book, what would I say about it? It's about a woman feeling trapped in a loveless marriage and seeking happiness, being sucked into something else because she is so starved of happiness and fulfillment. I think the bit in the book that remains perhaps shocking to even a current day reader is that her having children is not enough to make her hesitate from taking that step, as it were. In that respect, it's like Anna Karenina. It's like the American equivalent, I suppose. Again, would they ban Anna Karenina? Perhaps they would. It's a concise book. It's quite short. You can see it's beautifully written. It's beautifully constructed. It conveys the most intense emotions, but in a way that is absolutely not melodramatic. Quite the opposite, really. Quite often she uses quite mundane little details of what's happening, what people are eating, what they're wearing, what they're saying, to create this world in which these very intense emotional events are happening, but in a way that feels totally like they feel like real people, absolutely real people, a real woman. Edna feels like a real woman in a real family, in a real society, leading a real life. If you haven't read this book, it's only about 100, I think this edition is about 116 pages. So I would strongly urge you to do so. It won't take you long, and it will absolutely reward your time, and you will have the pleasure of knowing that you've read another of these books that is being threatened in the American library and school library system. There we go. And thank you, Brian, for an inspirational idea for a tag.